I'm looking a bit over the top today, but you know what? Wallis was over the top with her jewelry, so it works. It works. I am wearing bunny slippers though. Welcome back to part 3 of the Weird series, where we cover the incredibly weird love letters that Wallis Simpson and Edward VIII, formerly Edward VIII, exchanged throughout the years of 1931 to 1937. And today we are covering the final phase, the period between the abdication and their marriage. If you haven't seen parts 1 and 2, I highly recommend that you do. I will be linking them in the description box below for your convenience. They are important in the sense that some terms like enum are defined in part 1, and I don't want you being confused when you come across strange or weird terminology, and they used a lot, in the letters that we cover today. After the abdication, instead of a solemn mood consuming the now former king, Edward, according to his contemporaries and staying true to his weird self, was apparently seized by a form of euphoria, as if he were looking forward to his honeymoon, as the then Prime Minister Stanley Baldwin put it. Now, that's not to say that he wasn't feeling bitter about being cast out by his family and his country, but his joy, his euphoria, certainly overshadowed any bitterness that he may have felt at the time, as we shall see from his letters. Just as a refresher, Edward and Wallis are now separated. They couldn't be physically together until at least the 27th of April. I think it was then pushed to early May, when Wallis's divorce was finalized. So as we covered in her memoirs, Wallis went to Cannes, where she stayed with her long-term friends, Herman Rogers and his wife Catherine, whereas Edward stayed in a castle near Vienna, which was owned by Baron Eugene de Rothschild and his American wife, Kitty. Now, obviously, letter writing wasn't the only form of communication between the lovebirds, but where they were staying actually had terrible network coverage, for lack of a better word. I think that is the correct word, actually. They could barely hear each other over the phone. They'd basically have to be screaming at each other just to get heard. That's literally what Wallis says in one of her letters. But that's good news for us, because that means that they had to resort to some frequent letter writing. We'll start off with the very first letter that was exchanged between the couple right after the abdication, the very next day, on the 12th of December, 1936. Darling, my heart is so full of love for you, and the agony of not being able to see you after all you have been through is pathetic. At the moment, we have the whole world against us in our love. I don't think you will be happy long at Enzisfeld, and besides, you couldn't stay forever. I think after Christmas the limit. Perhaps some jealousy was brewing, considering that Rothschild himself had an American wife called Kitty. If we could have been together during the waiting, it would have been so much easier. I long for you so. I hear that there is an organization of women who have sworn to kill me. That's such a major jump and major change of tone. I love you so to, oh, by the way, I hear people want to kill me. Your broadcast was very good, my angel, and it is all going to be so very lovely. Make ooh. There goes that weird phrase again. I hope you will never regret this sacrifice, and that your brother will prove to the world that we still have a position and that you will be given some jobs to do. I love you, David, and I'm holding so tight. We left off in part 2 with Wallis basically begging him, almost losing her mind, not to abdicate. She was freaking out. And now that it's happened, it's interesting to see that this sense of calm, but also love, has now replaced that desperation to sever all ties with Edward. Now, while all this was going on, there was a spanner thrown in the works of the divorce in the form of an elderly man, a legal clerk, who claimed to be able to show cause as to why Wallis's divorce should not be made absolute. And he went far with this. On the 10th of December, he entered an appearance at the divorce registry in London. And so Wallis's lawyer, Theodore Goddard, sent her a letter informing her of this, which obviously was not received very well by Wallis. And so Wallis writes Edward on the 14th of December, complaining not only about this, which she calls the intervention in this letter, but also about Edward's family. Darling, it is practically the last straw, the intervention. I didn't think the world could put more on two people whose only sin is to love. I look 100 and weigh 110. You won't love me when you see the wreck England has made me. I now have the Sunday papers in which your mother makes a colossal denial of statements in foreign press saying she had seen me. It is a cruel denial. The world is against me and me alone. Not a paper has said a kind thing for me. It is plain that York, guided by her, would not give us the extra chic of creating me HRH. The only thing to bring me back in the eyes of the world. Not to draw parallels with Meghan Markle again, but the whole, your family is doing nothing to protect me in the eyes of the world, and in fact, they're briefing against me. We can't deny that there are similarities there. However, I'm not too clear on what Wallis expected. I mean, her son abdicated the throne for a woman, as far as people are concerned, because there's always that other theory that this was all orchestrated to deliberately get Edward off the throne because he was deemed unsuitable and too friendly with the Germans, if you catch my drift. You can also see how entirely obsessed she is by the notion of becoming HRH, and your brother York is not going to give it to me. It's funny how she really downplayed that in her memoirs. This is why I really appreciate these letters, because when she wrote them, I'm going to assume she had no idea that they would be published one day, with her consent apparently, as we mentioned in part 1. But this is a more accurate reflection of how she felt, how cut she was by the refusal to bestow that styling upon her. Now, I mentioned Charles Bedaux and the whole Nazi connection. There is a letter that Wallis subsequently sent Edward where she complains about rumors of her being a spy. Now, I don't know what kind of a spy she meant. Was it a German spy or an American spy? No idea. If it was the former, then you could argue that at least at this point in December of 1936, it wasn't true. Unless it was something, if you really want to reach into conspiracy theory mode, that she was keeping also from Edward. You let me know what you think in the comments so we can discuss it on next week's podcast. Then we have a very long letter from Edward. Don't worry, we're going to abbreviate it. But it's his longest letter yet, which makes sense because they've been separated. And what's funny is that it actually starts off normal enough until he slips right back into his unabashed signature weirdness. My own darling. I just don't know how to begin to write to you when I have so much that can only be oohed and said. Oh, my sweetheart. The thought of the next 4 months' separation is an agony and just not possible to think about. I am forcing myself to pretend that I'm only away from you because I'm on a job in this country and that you can't come here for business reasons. Oh, Pookie Demas, we say. Everybody, all of us here send all of you ooze, an enormous ooze for Christmas, and we are all of us so sad we can't send each other any presents. He, Enum and Pig, and all the toys miss you all at Louviers more than they can say. I love you, Wallis, more and more and more, and am holding so tight. Your David. It's actually a chore getting through his letters. Now, you know how everyone knows, really, that Meghan and Catherine, Princess of Wales, have some sort of rivalry. I shouldn't even say rivalry because Catherine is on a completely different dimension to Meghan. They could never even compete, really. But they don't like each other. And for good reason when it comes to Catherine. And we've discussed this sort of parallel that existed between Wallis and the then Queen. She and Wallis really didn't like each other, and you get a hint, perhaps, of that in this letter from Wallis, where she tells Edward, I am getting rather worked up about what support we are going to get from your family for our wedding. After all, We have done nothing wrong, so why be treated that way? It is not the first marriage to a commoner in the family. Really, David, the pleased expression on the Duchess of York's face is funny to see. How she is loving it all. There will be no support there. I want to close off the month of December with a very sweet letter, not from Edward, but from Ernest Simpson. I did not have the heart to write before. I have felt somewhat stunned and slightly sick over recent events. I am not, however, going into that, but I want you to believe, I do believe, that you did everything in your power to prevent the final catastrophe. My thoughts have been with you throughout your ordeal, and you may rest assured that no one has felt more deeply for you than I have. For a few pence each day, I can keep au courant with your doings. And would your life have ever been the same if you had broken it off? I mean, could you possibly have settled down to the old life and forgotten the fairyland through which you had passed? My child, I do not think so. January 1937. A new year and same weirdness. We open up the year with an incredibly passionate, optimistic, and yes, of course, weird letter from Edward to his beloved. Hello, my sweetheart.
Such a very happy new year I wish for we from the fastness of my exile from you and not from England, my darling. And although it is still a matter of weary months to wait, it is lovely to have 1936 behind us, and only this and many more happy years together to look forward to. Oh, poor everybody, we all say. And he is so scared of losing his hairpin that he does want her to hurry and send him another to secure the old one. Oh, make to think you'll hold this piece of paper. God, how I love you, my Wallis, my beloved sweetheart, more and more and more. I'm holding so tight all the time until that dear, lovely, precious day. Oh, God, make it come quickly and bless we this year and always. Your David.
Now, I did say that 1937 started with quite an optimistic letter. Yes, he misses her, but it seemed that he was looking forward to the future. However, based on Wallis's next letter to him, it's clear that they had a phone conversation where he wasn't perhaps feeling as optimistic as he led on. What happened? I lost my... As he led on. Darling sweetheart, I couldn't bear hearing you cry. You who have been through so much and are so brave. My baby, it is because I long to be with you so intensely. Everything becomes so magnified. Darling, I love you. Come to me soon. And it's interesting, actually, scrolling through these letters, Wallis was really going through an incredibly romantic phase. I don't know if it was genuine. In this next letter, she talks about how sometimes she felt as though her heart would burst if she didn't see him. And she also adopts his signature phrase of, I love you more and more. In the next letter on the 3rd of January, we get more complaints. Yet again, Wallis was really a broken record at this point about how his family refuses to protect their reputation in the eyes of the world by acknowledging them, acknowledging her, and bestowing upon her, you guessed it, that elusive title of HRH. I loathe being undignified and also of joining the countless titles that roam around Europe meaning nothing. Again, in really strong parallels with Meghan, she has no love lost for Edward's family. She says, frankly, I am disgusted with them all. One of the weirdest phrases that both Edward and Wallis use in their letters is this phrase where they say, I hide my face. I haven't read it out loud before because I thought it was an Edwardism, but then I come across this other letter from Wallis where she actually signs off saying the same thing. I hide my face, but send you all love. Wallis, I have no idea what they mean every time they say that. And trust me when I tell you, they say it a lot. And now brace yourselves for perhaps what is the weirdest, I keep saying strange, the weirdest letter from Edward I have ever come across to date. My sweetheart. This is just to say good measle,
and that I love you more and more before I make another drazzle. I enclose an Enum frog for the 31st to live in your bag with the fat Vienna frog. The silly man hasn't copied my writing as I've told him to. But anyway, it's what I want to add for 1937 opposite my oval picture. Please show the new Enum frog to her as he has seen it. How he longs for house and make soon he says too. God bless we, my beloved Wallis. Remember what the Enum frog says, and that I love you more and more. Your
David.
David.
Do you see what I mean when I said the weirdest? A subsequent letter from Wallis explains that the frog, let me just read it out to you. My sweetheart, I love the new frog, and so does she. The diamond nearly put her eye out. So clearly the frog was a piece of jewelry. The month of February was not a good one for both Wallis and Edward. Wallis became increasingly worried and paranoid about whether she was actually going to be granted her divorce. And it was also made clear to Edward that he would not, in fact, receive a pension in the civil list, and he is practically on exile. The first letter of note was sent from Wallis on the 6th of February, where she worries about her divorce, calls the new king slow, and also confirms my earlier suspicions of her jealousy of Kitty. I can only pray to God that in your loneliness you haven't flirted with her. I suspect that. Next, we have an undated letter in which Wallis complains yet again about the press. I really can't continue to carry on with all of England taking cracks at me and no decent society speaking to me. What have I done to deserve this treatment? I have never had a word said in my defense or a kind word in the press. Surely your brother can protect me a bit. Once again, this is very reminiscent of Meghan's complaints, especially on the Oprah interview and her Netflix reality show, where the constant theme was, the press were attacking me and the palace never protected me. After the sorrow of the month of February, the month of March seemed to be an improvement because Wallis was getting sick and tired of living with Herman and Catherine Rogers in Cannes and was looking forward to moving to none other than the Château de Condé, owned by one Charles Bédot, the traitor who ended up getting executed. The first letter of note that I want to read out from this month was yet again sent from Wallis to Edward. You'll notice Edward doesn't really write a lot. And he actually says in one letter, he apologizes that it's really not his forte. So you, in turn, have my apologies that you're not listening to Zach's dulcet tones as he reads out Edward's letters. And believe me, he has a lot of fun reading those out because it's wacky. But in any case, in this letter, Wallis, after insulting the UK in her usual manner for its mistreatment of her in the press, also talks about being assassinated. My sweetheart, I enclose you a letter which explains itself. I wonder if Scotland Yard can't have this anti-Simpson organization traced. You know, I heard of it in the very start from a man named de Courcy, who I believe is a lobbyist. Perhaps he could be interviewed in some way. I don't suppose, however, Scotland Yard would bother much about me. And then in the postscript is where she hints at an assassination plot. I think that's how I'm interpreting it, where she says, this sounds very much like the de Courcy idea. As he also said powerful and with money. You know what the latter means. Paying well for killing. And by the way, this de Courcy character she mentions was Kenneth de Courcy. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. I don't know if it's meant to be said in French. It's written in French. We're going to go with it. But basically, he was a political journalist who was actually trying to warn Wallis about an assassination attempt or plot that he had heard of, rumors of such a plot at least. In any case, they actually ended up being quite good friends in the future. The very next day, on March 7th, Wallis had an epiphany. My darling, I have come to what I think a very wise decision from everybody's point of view. I have decided that we must not be married until after the coronation. My reasons are as follows. And then she proceeds to explain that they're all going to be busy with the coronation there. It will make Wallis and Edward look good and respectable in the eyes of the UK public and also in the eyes of the royal family. And it would free up the royal family to attend their nuptials. Add to that the advantage of having more time to plan and prep, especially when they can physically be together after the 27th of April. She ends off the letter by saying, it is a clever move, my beloved, and I'm sure you will agree with a girl who lives for the day when you will call her your wife. There was another wrench thrown in their plans, which were that Edward would move to France, not to be with Wallis before April the 27th, but just to be closer. I don't know if they had any intentions of meeting. I think they did, and Wallis said surely they wouldn't have a problem if we just met in public. But the king's lawyer, George Allen, got whiff of this idea, of this plan, and promptly wrote to Wallis, warning her that if they proceed with this, if Edward is so much as seen in France, then they would jeopardize the divorce. And so Wallis, after receiving this letter, promptly wrote to Edward, forwarding it to him and sharing the bad news. Miraculously, he writes back without any dramatic threats of taking his life or anything of the sort. Sweetheart, here is Mr. Lou
and a few Enum things I'm sending you. I hate the waste of these 4.5 months of our lives which are so vital and precious to us, and which we'll never get back. Oh, pooh when I think of it. On the other hand, I guess it would give those mean swines a chance to hang us, which they seem to want to do, and we'll just show them that we can and will stick out this ridiculous and humiliating separation which has been imposed on us. God, how I hate and despise the lot.
Now, what's also enclosed in this letter is a list of things that Edward is sending to Wallis. And you'll note at the very top of the list is Mr. Lou, also known as Slipper, who is their dog. But before we get there, I want to close off the month of, are we in March? Month of March with this incredibly scathing letter from Wallis, which is really giving...
It's your brother. I'm not going to say anything about your brother, but it's so obvious.
My darling, I have been thinking all morning about your wretched brother. I think I should put it in the letter that if he continues to treat as though you were an outcast from the family and had done something disgraceful and continue to take advice from people who dislike you, that there would be only one course open to you, and that would be to let the world know exactly the treatment you were receiving from the people, family, you had placed in their present position. You are tired of taking all the knocks and unfair publicity. You have made a great sacrifice and you don't regret it, but you did not expect your brother to slip into your shoes and forget you completely, not giving even any small help to the remaking of your life. Such an exhibition has been most hurting, and you feel you must now take steps to protect yourself. Don't be weak, don't be rude, be firm, and make him ashamed of himself, if possible. I love you and want you here so badly. Wallis. P.S. 4 months of filthy treatment. Rub it in. And the advisors. She really wasn't holding back in this letter. She just probably was sitting there at the chateau, bored out of her mind, stewing over the fact that it was someone else on the throne, another woman, the Queen Mother as we know her, rather than her. And this makes me wonder whether Edward's bitterness towards his family was actually completely concocted and spurred on by letters such as this. And this is just one letter. Imagine what she was telling him over the phone and then subsequently in person for the rest of their lives. Oh God, did I just smear my lipstick? We now arrive in April, the month of their intended union. Not marriage, but physical reunion, I should say. However, the month does start off with the very tragic death of Mr. Lou, or Slipper. Remember? Edward had sent Wallis the dog, presumably to make her feel better and keep her company, before this happened. I'll let Wallis fill you in. Dear Fern, who is Mrs. Bedeau. Oh, my dear, such an awful thing has happened. I can hardly write about it. The Duke's and my beloved Slipper, he belonged equally to us both, was bitten by a viper yesterday afternoon and died last night. The vet in town did all he could, but I found him too late and the poison reached his heart. It does seem cruel to have this added sadness. Wallis then pens a letter to Edward about the death of their dog, where she says, My darling, I have just given Herman Mr. Lou's rug to wrap his little body in before Herman buries him. When you come, we will get a little stone for him. Even God seems to have forgotten we, for surely this is an unnecessary sorrow for us. Now the principal guest at the wedding is no more. Edward then responds on the same day and says, Oh, how utterly cruel
that our darling Mr. Lou should be taken from we like this. My heart is quite breaking this morning, my beloved sweetheart, from sadness, and above all from not being able to be with you and hold you so tight, which is the only help when we are unhappy. I have cried quite a lot too, and I know what a ghastly night you must have had. I won't say any more about it all, as that is too sad and too trying, my darling one. but I am sure you would like Mr. Lu to be buried near one of the enum paths I made for you at the fort. If you could have him embalmed and packed into an enum lead box, I would have Dudley Forward call for him on his way back to England in his motor next week. For God's sake, you be careful of those bloody reptiles, and I promise you I'm taking care of myself for you, so you're not to worry. A boy is holding a girl so very tight, sweetheart. You're sad,
David.
David.
And that's pretty much it. There are a couple of other letters where they talk about the divorce and the date of the wedding, but this video is getting long enough as it is, so I thought we would just end it there. Sorry to end it on a sad note. I actually didn't realize that that's where it ended. But with that, we conclude this 3-part weird series of royal love letters between the Duke and Duchess of Windsor. Thank you to everyone who's tuned in to this series, and hopefully we'll have more in the future. More love letters or more royal history in general. If you have any suggestions, any books that I could sink my teeth into and make series or videos out of, please leave your recommendations in the comments below. All right, take care, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.